We've had separate and special news bulletins by the state broadcaster to tell us what Michelle Obama and her daughters had for lunch in Dublin, but very little questioning of the fact that she was having lunch with Mr. Tax Exile himself. We had very little challenging of the fact that she's glad to be home, a country that she's been in less than a week and that her husband has very tenuous links in. And of course, the biggest irony of all, the protestations of Obama himself in his speech to the children in Northern Ireland about peace, when he said, "Those who choose the path of peace, I promise you that the United States of America will support you every step of the way. We will be the wind at your back." Now I ask you, is this person going for the Hypocrite of the Century award? Because we have to call things by their right names. And the reality is that by any serious examination, this man is a war criminal.
Documents are now revealing that U.S. intelligence agencies were fully aware that weapons were moving from the terror stronghold in Libya to Syria before the attack that killed the 4 Americans that you see at the center of our screen. The paper trail also contradicts President Obama's assertion that the rise of ISIS came as somewhat of a surprise to the administration. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge on this for us live in D.C. So, Catherine, what are we learning here about this?
Well, Martha, newly released documents show a serious disconnect between what the administration said and what was known as the Defense Intelligence Agency, also known as the DIA. This September 16, 2012 memo, copied to the National Security Council, State Department, CIA, and others, concluded the Benghazi terrorist attack was planned at least 10 or more days in advance. The DIA memo also reports the attack was tied to 9/11 and was retaliation for a June 2012 drone strike that killed an al-Qaeda strategist. There is no discussion of a demonstration or an anti-Islam video. Quote, "The intention was to attack the consulate and to kill as many Americans as possible, to seek revenge for the U.S. killing of Abu Yahya al-Libi in Pakistan, and in memorial of the 11 September 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center buildings." Judicial Watch obtained these new records by suing in federal court.
The Obama administration says it was a coincidence that it occurred on 9/11. In fact, their intelligence said it wasn't a coincidence, and in fact, specifically, the attack occurred because it was 9/11.
And another DIA memo from 2012 predicts the rise of ISIS and the establishment of a caliphate 17 months before the president called the terror group the jay-vee team, Martha.
There's been a lot of discussion about what our operatives were doing there at the time when this attack happened, and that there was discussion about moving weapons out of that very volatile area in Libya. What do we learn about that in here, Catherine?
Well, Martha, another DIA memo dated October 5th, 2012, leaves no doubt that U.S. intelligence agencies were clearly aware that lethal weapons were being shipped to Syria via the port of Benghazi. In a recent interview with Bret Baier, the former acting CIA director skirted the topic.
Were CIA officers tracking the movement of weapons from Libya to Syria?
Can't talk about that.
Can't talk about it.
Can't talk about it.
Even if they weren't moving the weapons themselves, are you saying categorically that the U.S. government and the CIA played no role whatsoever in the movement of weapons from Libya to Syria?
Yes, we played no role. Now, whether we were watching other people do it, I can't talk about.
The DIA memo also reported that military stockpiles were moving from Benghazi to the Syrian ports of Banaus and Bor Islam, and the shipments included rifles, RPGs, and missiles. This DIA document may also be problematic for Mrs. Clinton, who also skirted the weapons issue during her only congressional testimony on Benghazi of January 2013.
He has just announced his decision to supply arms to the Syrian opposition, including the jihadists, fueling the destabilisation of that region and continuing to undermine secularism and knock back conditions for women. This is the man who is in essence stalling the Geneva peace talks by trying to broker enhanced leverage for the Syrian opposition by giving them arms, and to hell with the thousands more who lose their lives, or the tens of thousands more who will be displaced as this war goes on. This is the man who has facilitated a 200% increase in the use of drones, which have killed thousands of people, including hundreds of children. And you, Taoiseach, You are the one who's turned a blind eye on these activities. You've talked about the G8 being an opportunity to showcase Ireland. But is it not a reality that you have showcased us as a nation of pimps, prostituting ourselves in return for a pat on the head? To be honest with you, we were really speculating this morning whether you were going to deck the cabinet out in leprechaun hats decorated with a bit of stars and stripes to really mark abject humiliation here. So my question to you, Taoiseach, is as follows. What steps are you going to take to follow in the correct statements and the correct decision of your colleague Taoiseach Eamon Gilmore, who voted against the lifting of the arms embargo in relation to Syria? What steps are you going to take to ensure that no weapons for Syria are going to go through Shannon in breach of our international laws on neutrality? What steps are you going to take to showcase this country not as a lapdog of US imperialism, but as an independent nation with an independent foreign policy which takes a lead in international diplomacy to outlaw the use of drones, the favourite method of extermination of your friend Mr. Obama?